What's up, you guys? I'm Nikhil Wallace with thedrumbreakdown.com, and for the first few years of my drumming life, my doubles sucked. I couldn't figure out why. Eventually, I got the hang of them after months of frustration by sheer accident. But when I started teaching, I realized that my students' doubles sucked too, and I didn't know how to help them out. After a few years of teaching, I started to catch on to some solutions to common mistakes that help my students improve their doubles quickly. So today I'm going to go over those mistakes with you and help you unsuck your doubles. So let's break it down. But before we get started, if you've ever wondered how drummers take the rudiments that we've all worked on from just an exercise on the practice pad to a creative idea around the drum set, I have a free video out called The Evolution of a Rudiment. It details my process of developing a rudiment from start to finish, so I'll link that video in the description below. Doubles are one of those rudiments that are simple to understand but hard to master. All they are 2 hits on each hand: right, right, left, left, right, right, left, left. But the technique that you need to develop control over the rebound of the stick and to flow at any speed takes time and effort to get under your hands. I've noticed 3 common mistakes that mess up people's doubles. The first mistake people make is not having discipline over their fingers. The foundation of any grip is the fulcrum. This is where the stick pivots back and forth and is usually made between the thumb and index finger. The remaining 3 fingers are there for support and control and added motion. The problem that a lot of drummers have is that they don't get the bottom 3 fingers out of the way enough to allow the stick to bounce. And then on the flip side, they don't close the fingers to regain control after the stick is finished bouncing, which causes the stick to move around in the hand. To fix this, I like to practice without the stick. So one of the ways I like to work on this with my students is to have them practice without any sticks in their hands. I have them raise their hands up and then drop the wrist down and release the fingers. Then when you bring the wrist back up, close the fingers. Wrist down, fingers open, wrist up, fingers closed. When you get comfortable with this, we want to do the same thing with the sticks in our hands. We're going to drop the stick down, release the fingers, and then that stick should bounce pretty freely. So you want to drop the stick down, open the fingers, then when you bring your hand back up, let the fingers contract back up with the stick. Down, fingers open, stick bounces until it's done, up, fingers close back up. When you get comfortable with this, you want to throw the stick down, release the fingers, let the stick bounce twice, and then pick it back up. You want to do that with both hands, obviously. Make sure that you look at your wrist when you're practicing and make sure that your stick is actually bouncing and that you're not just moving your wrist 2 times. The next problem I've noticed are uneven bounces between the hands. This is caused by a lack of velocity and too much or too little tension in the fulcrum. The velocity part is easy. Just make sure you raise your wrist high enough so that you can throw the stick down with some good momentum. A lot of my students like to force out their doubles with as little wrist motion as possible. It's important that we take full advantage of the full range of motion of the wrist and raise our sticks up as high as they can without moving our arms and forearms. Think of your fulcrum like a spring. The tighter you squeeze, the quicker the stick will bounce. The looser you squeeze, the slower it'll bounce. Now, when I say squeeze, that might give off the wrong impression. I'm just talking about very slight changes of pressure. You should never death grip your sticks or hold them so loose that they fall out of your hand. A good way to work on this is to set your metronome to a quicker speed. I suggest starting around 170 BPMs. Bounce your stick with the metronome for 2 clicks and then rest for 2 clicks. Your goal is to let your bounces line up with that metronome. If your bounces are too slow, slightly tighten up your fulcrum until the bounces line up. If your bounces are too fast, slightly loosen up the tension in your fulcrum so that the bounces match. The last problem I've noticed is improper hand motion. When we first started learning to move the sticks, most of us were taught to pretend like our hands were on a pulley. When one hand goes down, the other hand goes up. Most students have no problems doing this when they're playing singles, but there's something about the speed of doubles that make us want to move our hands just as fast as the notes that we're playing. In actuality, our wrists should be moving half as fast as our sticks are bouncing. Here's a good exercise to practice. Play a measure of eighth note singles and make sure that your hands are moving up and down like they're on a pulley. One hand goes down while the other hand goes up. On the second measure, release your fingers and allow the sticks to start bouncing using the techniques that we've learned in the previous two steps. If you do this correctly, the notes should double in speed, but your hand should never break stride.